Yes, it says every drummer will learn something from this, and I strongly believe that, and not because this is some be-all end-all method. It's actually the exact opposite. It's a guideline to understand ergonomics and our physical well-being as drummers so that we could play for decades, so that we could play accurately into every element of our drum kit. So let's get into the video and I'll see you on the other side.
What is the 12 o'clock formula? What is the neutral position? What is a drummer's circle? What's the spread angle? How's it going, everybody? My name's Ken Schalk. I am the ERGO-DRUMMER. We're about to dive real deep, and it all starts right here with the drum throne.
When you set up with two kick drums, you automatically get put into the 12 o'clock setup. And the only way to set the kick drums up is in a way that angles them outward and puts the snare drum at your center. This was something that happened naturally. So when I went to a double pedal in the 90s, my first instinct was I have to set this second pedal up in a way that would emulate having two kick drums. And hence was born my 12 o'clock formula. Kids in the 90s into the 2000s, they started playing with a double pedal, not double bass. And a lot of them, through a lot of students I've taught and a lot of other drummers I've seen on tour, the way they set up, the double pedal would not be conducive to having two kick drums. It would be in all different types of setups, all to try and accommodate the forward-facing setup. The forward-facing setup uses the kick drum as the 12 o'clock reference. Now you can still place the kick drum facing forward towards your audience or parallel with the room, but instead of trying to set your body up to accommodate that forward-facing kick drum, you're sitting your body at an angle to accommodate the 12 o'clock reference in the snare drum. And then the kick drum gets placed where it needs to. And what you see here is where I've chosen my 12 o'clock to be. If we look at the top of the screen and make believe that's 12 o'clock, say a stage facing forward or in a room facing forward, I'm now facing like 10:30, but 10:30 now becomes 12 o'clock for me. In the neutral position, you're getting a seat and sitting down. If you look in the overhead, I'm just sitting there and my legs are naturally spreading out to my own body. So everyone's gonna have what's called a spread angle. Once you sit down, your legs spread out and they go a certain width. If I just get behind a seat right here in front of you right now, let's take the drums out of the equation. My natural seating is a little bit spread out. Everybody's different on how they naturally sit. Generally, for most humans in the 5'5" to 6'3" range are gonna be anywhere between 40 to 45 degrees and 50 and 55 degrees. If you think about the center pole of your drum throne, and that comes through the center of the seat, that is gonna be the direct center of what I call the drummer's circle. Now, it doesn't matter what shape seat you have. The point is that to reference how we're building out the 12 o'clock formula, it starts with a circle, and that circle gets bigger and bigger and expands outward. No matter where you're hitting on the drum set, everything's going to radiate out from the center of that circle. And in the middle of all of it, where I'm sitting, is the 12 o'clock. So the drum throne itself is the center of everything. In this particular setup, I've got the throne up a little bit higher. My hips, as you see, are higher than my knees. My thighs, they're in a place where they could act as a positive bridge of energy flow. Sometimes, if you're playing more submissive and you don't want to overpower the drums, you adjust the seat height. So as I go lower, it'll get to a place where the drums are starting to rise above my sitting position. And then now I'm playing to the drums as opposed to me playing over the drums. And what that does is it just allows me physically and mentally to feel a little more laid back about playing them. So I won't try to beat them up now. I'll actually be in a more submissive place and my dynamic range will drop a little bit. You have fully all the way soft to all the way loud. So if you're playing a song where you have to be on the softer side to medium and you can't get too loud, lowering your seat down and becoming more submissive to the drums overall physically will bring you down and allow you to play in that dynamic pocket. Some people are very tall and they may have to sit lower just because their torso is going to rise. You have to analyze the way you stroke into drums, and then that'll also play a role in where you sit and the height at which you put all the elements of the drum set. Everybody sits at different distances from the drums as well. Some people like to be a little bit closer, keep their movements very close to their body. I've seen plenty of drummers who do that. I've seen plenty of drummers like myself a little further back. You can see I'm pretty relaxed. I'm not trying to do anything crazy, and I could kind of lightly hit the drums if I wanted. But I sit further back for heavier playing music because when I do play, I start to lean in. Everything gets a lot closer naturally. The drum throne is a support system, but it also allows us to distribute energy. As you see in the overhead that I have 2 bass drum spur marks spiked out. For anyone not aware of what a spike mark is, it's when you take like a duct or a gaffer's tape, pull off little strips, outline either the foot of a stand or your foot pedals. So like you can see in the overhead, those 2 little triangular looking things are 2 pieces of duct tape taped together like that, and then placed right in front of where the bass drum spur spike goes into the rug. Same thing with the drum throne. I took 3 pieces of duct tape, so here's only 2, but I made a 3rd one, and that surrounded the foot of the drum throne. So again, I've already got this kick drum spiked from when I originally set it up. But as you can see in the overhead, the kick drum goes down, and my foot, once I place it on the pedal, you can see it's all natural. It's all part of my natural spread angle that's already been established. And as you see, I'm facing forward, that's my 12 o'clock. Here's the kick drum with my natural spread angle. With my left foot over here, I'm gonna assume, hey, this is where my hi-hat goes. So I bring the hi-hat in place, and I get my feet to sit, and there I am. In this particular setup, I'm at 53 degrees spread angle between the kick drum and the hi-hat stand. Ergonomics is a very broad and diverse landscape physically. I can have all different types of hi-hat heights. Think about your dynamic environment and what you're playing on the hi-hat, and then from there determine what kind of height and distance you want. You know, if I'm playing something where I want to be on top of the hi-hat, and playing like a sensitive 16th note, and that's the whole premise of the song, and I'm not doing anything hard or on the edge, I would lower the hi-hats and I'd sit closer, and then this way I could just casually throw the stick down and the hi-hat will be here and I'll hit right on top of it. If I'm in a band where I'm doing a whole bunch of different things and I need the edge and I need to have the space, but I also need to get sensitive, then I need to make those physical adjustments as I go through this diverse set of music. This hi-hat setup is in a place for heavier hitting, more intentful playing. It's higher, but at the same time, it's not so high I can't get on top of it for more sensitive top saucer work, but it's also not too low where if I do lay in, I'm gonna feel like I'm pushing towards it. If I'm in a bad position with an object, then I'm gonna have to do extra things to try and get to it. Right now, if I line up the stick parallel to the ground and move it across, to me, it hits just under my chest muscle. Like that's gonna be a motion that I'm gonna make. It's gonna be right around that chest area. You can go a little higher into the chest as well. I've got tons of room here to still go higher. If you do open hi-hat work, then you need a little play on top to be able to allow for that. Remote hi-hats are amazing. Auxiliary hi-hats, so that if you want to play a hi-hat beat and you're constantly on double bass, you don't have to worry about your main hi-hat. You can have that set up to be used as a main hi-hat when you're not playing double bass, but then have an auxiliary hi-hat for all your double bass work. That's an amazing advancement. I always loved that from when they introduced it in the 80s. For 2 kick drums, they make hi-hat clamps that can clamp to the hoop of the second kick drum, and you can fold the legs down. They also make legless hi-hat stands now, which is awesome too. And you can really get that hi-hat stand nice and close to the second pedal if you are using 2 kick drums. Plenty of drummers do that. The double pedal is an interesting part of kick drum setup. You have a hi-hat pedal and you have a double pedal or another kick drum pedal. So out of the 2 pedals, one of them can be your natural spread angle, but the other one can't. I always advise you make the hi-hat your natural spread angle. From a physical perspective on how our body works anatomically, it's much easier to move your foot in towards another pedal than to try and move it out. Even if I was playing 2 kick drums, the second kick drum would still be an interior setup. But if you're using a double pedal, you know, it's all going to be built around that drummer's circle. Every time I build out a piece of gear, it should radiate out from the center of my axis, which is the coronal and sagittal plane meeting at the center of my body. I try to keep my double pedal a little bit spaced away from my hi-hat pedal, just so when I get over to it, my foot is fully clear of it. I could spread the connecting rod out a little more and get this pedal closer to the hi-hat stand and angle it a little more for where my foot normally is, because my foot angle is going to be a little different than the pedal angle. And you may call that an ergonomic no-no, but if I angle the pedal too far that way, then it's too close to the hi-hat pedal. Bring it in a little bit and get it so it's not perfectly moving to the center line, but it is in a way where I can still get my foot on it, and my foot is on the meat of the pedal, and there's no issue. With all of these hardware components, we have tripod stands. I found ergonomically that the leading foot, which works out well for the whole geometry of the 12 o'clock formula, it also physically works out well in that when you push down into that snare, when that energy comes in, that forward-facing leg really anchors the snare drum in. If you think about this one leading leg of the tripod, that leading leg, wherever I place it, I'm trying to place it in a way so that it goes on a direct line towards the center of my drum throne. Even though I use the leading leg of the stand to kind of point towards me and it makes it easier to tuck them into the drums, that leading leg also plays a role in how it stabilizes when it gets hit. The energy arc is going to happen in different ways. It's going to meet different objects at different points. By the time you're coming in with your energy arc and hitting the element, whether it's the tom or the cymbal, it's pushing this way. The two legs in the back really take on all of that energy and hold the stand in place, while when you hit, that leading leg supports the balance. With the snare drum, the leading leg concept works opposite. When I hit down with the energy arc, by the time I hit the drum, it's pulling towards me. Having the two back legs towards me gives that boom, that nice support, but it also allows the leading leg to hold, and it holds it in place. But now we're going to show you how the leading leg concept works when we apply it to setting up the drum set. So my good friend and business partner, Jason Prushko, he's also a drummer, obviously, and the set that we're building up is for a live gig he has going on right now. Jason does use the 12 o'clock concept. He also uses the forward-facing position. Here's the snare stand. So I've got him set up with the leading leg in front and the two back legs behind the snare drum. So as he hits into the drum, the energy goes down and everything is supported for him. As you get bigger toms onto stands, you want to be aware of spreading that tripod out a little more, create a bigger base. I got those legs really nice and wide, and it just creates so much more efficient support. If you're putting the leading leg of a snare drum out this way and you're bringing the leading leg of a tom stand in this way, there's a little bit of crossing of the paths there. So it's not pointing to the center, but it's still pointing in that same direction, but it's just shifted a little bit so that it doesn't interfere with the snare drum. Sometimes ergonomically, you can't always have the perfect setup and have it perfectly angled. Sometimes you do have to make little adjustments, like with the tom stand. It's a drum set, and even in its smallest configurations, it could still be massive because of how many different things you're considering when setting it up. When we're sending energy down the tom, we want energy to stay in as fluid of a distribution method as possible. So it's nice to have it set up in a way where everything is in line with the direction. It's coming straight down the drum, and then the leg goes straight through that way. Before everybody jumps in the comments, of course, there are always exceptions to the rule. Like I said, nothing in this is be all end all. It's all manipulatable. It's all nuanced in a way that if you have to make a small adjustment here or there, you do it. It's a matter of when you are doing those tweaks, try to keep them as minimal as possible. We want to only tweak as much as we need to. being on tour where I initially was duct taping my snare drum stand down. I would duct tape my China stand. And then I realized, I was like, hey, these rugs that I use are like the soft side of Velcro. So what if I got hard Velcro, put it on the bottom of the stand? I wonder if it would stick. And sure enough, I did it and it worked. And I've been doing that for decades now. And the rugs that I use are a tight loop rug. It's mostly an indoor, but it's like an indoor-outdoor style rug. It's got a strong base, so it sits well on the ground, and then the tight looping acts as the soft side of Velcro. So if you take the hard side of Velcro, put little pads at the bottom of your stand where the leading feet are catching all the support, let that grip into the tight looped rug, and it's like a Velcro grip, and it's great. Once it's down, it's on there, like as if you taped it down. And so we have the snare stand in place. My drum throne is set up in a way where the leading leg of the snare drum are moving perfectly in line with each other. So from there, I get that perfect setup to see how I'll set my arms up in my neutral position. And if I just take my arms and wrap over, and you look in the overhead now, look at that. Those sticks go right into the center, and that's your snare drum setup. When I'm setting up my drums, I'm setting them up because of a variation of motions that I'm going to make into them. And then I find the ideal height, angle, and position that makes the most sense for me. And that'll be different for everyone as you go forward and think about how your body functions. How we play just based on our physical makeup can dictate so many little nuanced changes between one set and another. Any drummer knows you get behind another person's kit and you're like, wow, or something like,
oh, you put that this way.
It's always going to be different than yours. So before we go forward with the toms and cymbals, it's important to know that what you're getting is a more specific approach through my own personal setup, but it's based on a very foundational concept, utilizing the transverse plane. Now, earlier in the video, I did discuss the coronal and sagittal plane briefly, but the transverse plane is the main component in all of this. You know, once you set up the feet, you're pretty stable with your lower body. The snare drum is centered, so now your general seated position, your neutral position, everything is solid. But now moving forward, when you start to actually play the drums and the cymbals, you're going to torque your upper body around. If not, and you sit pretty still and just kind of flick your way around, that's totally cool, I get it. But if you're gonna be more involved in investing your body and your arms into playing the drums and the cymbals, then it's important to start thinking about these mini 12 o'clocks. So as I torque my body, then my elbow becomes the stable center of the circle to then move a 12 o'clock line to each component. Now, in order to do that efficiently, it's important to understand how the transverse plane cuts through the lower and the upper body. And I have a little bit of a brief outline on how that works, and you'll see that in a second. Because we play in our own way, each of us, every drummer, it's important to utilize that transverse plane to your advantage, because then you start to have a more conscious concept of what your body is actually doing with the drum set. As opposed to just playing, you now understand, hey, I can really fine-tune these drums. The transverse plane, which cuts through our body horizontally this way and parallel to the ground, separates our lower body from our upper body. When you start to play drums with the transverse plane concept in mind, you're sending energy up from your abdominal area. You've seen me in the past play on stage and everything. Most of the times you see me playing, or even in my videos, I have my shoulders kind of up. I play more of a shoulder up style. I'm not tense. I'm not feeling robotic at all. I'm actually feeling super loose and energized. That's because from the transverse plane style of playing, I'm sending energy up from the abdomen. And because of that, it allows my arms to play this way. I'm sending energy up and I'm throwing it out and towards the drums. So this is the motion I'm thinking about when I'm playing. I got my lower body independent through the transverse plane concept, doing its own thing. But then my upper body is free to rotate around in my drummer's circle, but it's also free to take energy from the abdomen and work around to the kit. So you'll see me, because I'm constantly sending energy up, I look like I'm playing with my shoulders up, which I am. But it's not because I'm trying to hold my shoulders up. It's because I'm constantly sending energy upward and outward. And that's why you see that. In this case, we're dealing with a 4-piece setup, so it's just one rack up and one floor down. Pretty simple. Obviously, drummers all over the place use different types of setups. Multiple toms here, alternate snare drums, roto toms, maybe drums up here. Like, adding more and more is, again, that's all an expansion of working around your circle.
One thing I would like to add at this point in the discussion, everything is so much more advanced with racks, different height levels, the convenience of curved bars. If you really want a big drum set, it's worth it to then just make the investment. Once you get to a place where you're using so many stands, they could really become an annoyance trying to interlock them and find a place to put them. Get a rack and utilize those curved bars, just like a drummer's circle, to actually build out your kit.
But in the basic setup, this rack tom is going to be a straight line out from the center of the circle. And once again, I'm going to smack into it in a way that makes sense for me. If you actually sat behind my set, you might question and say, why is your rack tom facing away from you? Well, it's not really. It's not facing away from how I play. Yes, it's facing away from my body at the 12 o'clock position. But this drum is set up in a way that allows me to play it the way I need to. So when I play the drums and I go into the tom, that tom from my left side is going to get hit like that. I have to hit it with this hand too. So I created an angular setup that points basically this way. Because if I'm coming over the top, then it's easy to get into the drum this way. And if I'm coming over the top here, it's easy to get into the drum this way. So it's just me taking my torso, slightly skewing it towards the tom. Here, see that? It's just my lats, my arm, and I just do a little bit of a torque to the right for that. And then this one, a little torque to the left, and coming over and in. And then for the floor tom, where it's ahead of me, so I'm playing towards it, this way, throwing energy over and at it. For this arm, if I need to play that way out of a drum roll, I'm turning my torso around the drummer's circle and I'm coming this way, and my arm will be here. And I will have my 12 o'clock elbow, and I will have my perfect release, and I will be here. So even though my legs are here, with my transverse action taking place, I could torque my torso around to here while keeping my legs where they need to be. Instead of this being the only 12 o'clock, as I play around the kit, I'm going to move my upper body around the drummer's circle to make everything become its own 12 o'clock. I call that facing the target. Now, you don't always have to do that. There are also flick methods which work great. You would just kind of rotate the wrist around this way. A lot of people do that, and it's cool. If you're flicking, that's fine, but there still has to be an ergonomic balance there. You got to make sure the drum is still in that spot so that you can do the flick. If you add out more drums, it's always going to be a consideration for everything. This cymbal stand will obviously have to move to a different spot if I add another tom over here. But I'll still want to get the cymbal to be in the place where I need it to be. Everybody's different. Some people love cymbals no matter what, and every setup they have, they're going to have a whole bunch of cymbals. And that's going to complicate things a lot more, but it's still all based on the same principles of how we set up. We want to try and be as efficient as possible with every piece of gear. So this cymbal stand here is a boom stand, but I don't need to boom it. So I lock the arm in, I keep it straight, and again, using the leading leg concept. So in this case, when I come down on the cymbal, it hits, and that leading leg in the front is angled so that it's pointing directly at me in the center, and the cymbal is set up so that if I go and try and hit it with either hand, I could easily do that. Distance, again, is always going to be something that's important to think about. How far do I stroke? Where am I going to be sitting? Am I leaning in? Do I lean back? Do I sit closer? Do I sit further? How long is my drumstick? All of these questions are being contemplated and answered in real time as we think about the setup, you know, and we sit there and we mimic. You mimic what you want to do with your body. You know, it's not a guessing game. It's literally going to happen. Like, you're going to play the drums. So before you put a component in that place, think about, like, where am I going to hit it? Is this the spot? You know, and then if that feels natural to you, then you grab it like you see here. You put it in place, and when it gets in place, bam. See that? It's locked. And as you can see in the overhead, I'm testing out my distances, I'm testing out my angles, and I'm making sure that the cymbal is in the exact place it needs to be. And it's no different with the other cymbals. Now, one thing that's cool, if you look at the coronal and sagittal plane, look where the china is, right? The china is actually in front of my body. And the whole point of that, with the efficiency factor being brought into this, the ergonomic factor, is that here's my playing, and here's my coronal plane. So all my playing should happen in front of the coronal plane. Obviously, with a giant drum set, if you need to put things behind you, you figure that out, and it should still have an ergonomic value to it. But essentially, anything that's in front of me on the drum set should be truly 100% in front of me. So this china is set up in a way, as you can see in the video of the overhead, I'm moving things around so that I can actually get to a place where my arm is in front of me and I can come into the china on an angle. I'm not hitting the china this way. Even though the drum set goes across like this, I'm not going to hit the china or reposition and hit the china here. I'm going to play forward. I always want to think about playing forward. So all of the cymbals are being set up in a way that allow me to throw my arm forward at them. So when I go to hit something like this is not the 12 o'clock anymore. This is now the 12 o'clock to hit. And every time I go to hit, I want to make sure that when I'm playing that stroke, that my elbow is establishing a nice 12 o'clock line towards the algorithm. So then when I execute in and throw my stroke at it, I'm in that perfect place of release. Now moving on to the ride cymbal, this is interesting because the ride cymbal is a very diverse cymbal when we use it. We can use it on the bell, on the saucer, we could even crash the edge, we can use other parts of the saucer for different vibes. So we want to have it in a position, generally like most people do, they'll kind of fit it in that pocket between their rack tom and their floor tom. If you have two rack toms on top of your kick drum, that's just going to either make you decide whether you want to slide the ride over and get it between that other rack and the floor tom and have it somewhere around here, or if you want to place it up higher, like say like a classic metal drummer, Nico McBrain, one of my favorites growing up, he hovers it over his rack tom pretty low. That's a personal decision thing, but ultimately that is an option where you can keep the ride in a position like this, but just raise it up higher above that rack tom and just play it more like that. Right now we have a setup where it gives that nice opening between the rack and the floor, and you can just slide that ride right in. And I have it at a distance again that allows me to play it on the saucer casually, or if I want to play loud. You could alternate patterns like doing a ride saucer thing. Those are always cool. And you want to have that ride in a position where if you're pulling off that type of thing, you can get your arm out. And again, I have my 12 o'clock elbow and everything's going to be in place where I can make my perfect stroke. Even here, if I turn over the wrist and I do a little more of a flick style stroke into the saucer, you can see that the stick and my arm are perfectly lined up and I'm getting perfect energy release into the ride. So everything is set up in a way that makes it easy for me. Again, I lean in a little bit, so leaning in and playing the bell of the ride, not a problem. It looks pretty far away, but it's really not. Crash cymbal again. Generally, I keep my crashes about equal height. That's another thing that will accommodate audio engineers when they're miking the overheads. If you have your cymbals in a way that can evenly send audio out to the microphones, it's going to make things easier for the engineer to balance. China, I do keep a little bit below. A lot of drummers do that. But you could also bring it up higher, put it wherever you want. Again, cymbals are a very personal thing, and the amount we use and the sizes we use varies from drummer to drummer. In this case, with a very simple setup, 2 crashes, ride, China, and hi-hat. The China, again, it's away from me in this way, so that thinking about the drummer's circle and the radiation of lines that come from the center, this China is coming out from the center this way. But my new 12 o'clock is my arm. So now when I play, there's my elbow, and there's my line, and there's my attack angle right there, right into it. When we start playing drums, we start generally on a practice pad or a snare drum. We're centered, we're focused, we're learning the technique, the form for a great drum stroke. And that's amazing. But then from that one place, once we enter into the world of playing a drum set, that snare drum is not the only thing anymore. There's elements everywhere. And we have to be so consciously aware that we are able to now move and get that drum stroke to still execute and unfold and unravel and hit into each object the same way that we learned how to hit into the practice pad or the snare drum. So to wrap it up, everything I've been talking about really has no relevance unless there's a technically sound, well-executed drum stroke behind it. Take a few minutes to end this video off analyzing what a real, properly executed drum stroke is, and how a drumstick's density, weight, and size can also play a role in the sound you want. If I release too early, now I gotta push the rest of the way. If I release too late, I'm not getting the energy out in time. I'm hitting before I actually made the drum stroke. So you wanna be able to make a drum stroke that, bam, locks right in at the point of perfect release. See, this is gonna be just a constant motion, but then, boom, that stick is going to fly, and it's going to go faster and faster and faster, which is acceleration of velocity. And as it gets faster and faster and faster, when it finally releases at this point, that's the maximum amount of speed and potential energy release it has. So when I get to that point, I want to be hitting the actual object. So everything I set up is getting set up in a way so that when I make that 12 o'clock stroke from the elbow down and I get that perfect release, I'm hitting the object. Perfect release. Perfect release. Perfect release. Perfect release. It's all about getting that exact moment of release to release the most amount of energy. And then on top of that, if you want to play loud too, bigger sticks help. This is mass. The more mass you have in your stick, the more energy it can put into the object. If I want loud, robust sounds, then I want to use bigger, fatter sticks, longer, fatter sticks, so that when they hit the object, even if I play soft, just the matter of fact of having a bigger, fatter stick gives more energy into the drum sound. On the contrasting side, if I need to make the drums not sound so big and so loud, then I will lighten up my sticks and use a lesser stick. I don't just use these giant Tommy Aldridge 2S's. These are 17 inches long, they're 5/8 of an inch thick, and they have an extremely short neck. The tip is massive, so a lot of dense, massive amounts of energy come out of this stick into objects. This is a Will Kennedy stick. Now, we're a little bit shorter at like 16.5, but it's a much thinner stick. It's still a pretty short neck, but it's a little longer than the Tommy Aldridge. And this stick overall will give me a whole different sound when I hit into it. Freedom comes from centeredness, a balance, the ability to consciously but subconsciously execute whatever we want, whenever we want. And the only way you get there is having an ergonomic center that builds everything out in a way that makes drum stroke execution easy and adaptable anywhere.